moving from the states to the national outlook for the economy. We're joined now by Kevin Hassett. He's a former Federal Reserve senior economist, now with the American Enterprise Institute, and he joins us from Washington. Kevin, good to see you again as always.
Oh, yeah, thanks. It's great to be here, Mark.
Kevin, you write recently in a Bloomberg column that the dollar's demise can be traced to what you call a tax trap. What is that?
Well, the tax trap is a situation a country can get in where it can lift marginal tax rates and not really raise any more revenue. The fact is that the U.S. has this massive deficit. We need more revenues so that people will have faith that we're going to be able to pay back our debts. And the problem is that our taxes are so high relative to other countries that when we lift the marginal tax rates, which is something the Democrats want to do next year, it's not obvious that we're going to get much revenue at all out of that. And so we're kind of in a tax trap, which is the fiscal policy equivalent of a liquidity trap.
Well, Kevin, what are the revenue effects if taxes are only increased on those Americans with incomes higher than $250,000?
Well, what happens is that for people who have incomes that are just a little bit above that level, then if they lower their income in response to the higher tax rate, something that everybody does, you know, you move from getting taxable interest to getting a muni bond, for example, then your taxable income goes down. Well, if they do that, then the government loses 35 cents that it gets today on every dollar of income reduction. For the income that stays there in the bracket, then they'll maybe get 5 or 6 cents more because they lifted the tax rate. But the 5 or 6 cents more has got to overpower the 35 cents that we lose for every dollar that goes down. And so for people who are kind of close to the beginning of the bracket, we actually lose a lot of money. And really, you have to go way up to $600,000–700,000 incomes before the federal government makes money on the tax hike the Democrats have planned. And that's why we're not going to raise much revenue. We're in a tax trap.
So what's the answer?
Well, the answer is that first we have to cut government spending. We should reject attempts to expand the role of government the way the Democrats are doing in this health bill. I think an honest accounting of it would cost something like $3 trillion, especially if we started the benefits right now, not the $1 trillion they're talking about.
Now, Kevin, you know what the other side is always saying. They're saying they're not expanding the role of government, that it is an option. I take it you don't buy that.
Yeah, I don't think that's a fair or honest assessment of what they're up to. And the fact is that the savings, even the savings that they're talking about, are savings that we need to save Medicare. Even before this health bill, Medicare is short maybe $40–50 trillion in present value. And to take the ideas that we have to try to fix that and use it to pay for something else is just irresponsible. And what I'm saying is that they're doing that because they think that next year they're going to raise money when they lift the marginal tax rates, but they're not going to be able to do that. And so when foreign investors see us lift marginal tax rates and not get more revenue from that, which will be apparent in the monthly Treasury statements as soon as those tax rates go up, then I think it's going to be really hard for the U.S. to sell bonds. And it's very bearish for the dollar. It's very bearish for U.S. bonds.
Kevin, PEMCO's Bill Gross told us yesterday that Fed Chairman Bernanke's pledge to keep the benchmark interest rate near zero for, in his words, an extended period while fueling a surge in assets is raising what Gross called the systemic risk of new asset bubbles. Do you agree with that assessment?
Oh, absolutely. I think we're far away from that. But Gross has been out in front of this in a good way in the past, and I guess I've disagreed with him in the past at my peril. And the fact is that the long rates right now are really low because people think the Fed's going to keep the short rate low for a long time. But sooner or later, inflation is going to pick up, and that's going to reverse itself. When that happens, there's going to be a real nasty surprise for the bond market.
Kevin, let me ask you about Secretary Geithner's testimony on Capitol Hill yesterday. He took a lot of heat from lawmakers. Was it justified? And do you agree with those who say he should be fired or he should resign?
You know, I do now think that he's someone who should resign. I think the heat was justified because that's what Congress does. The fact is that every cabinet official in the history of the United States has gone up to Congress and people have demanded that they resign. That's what Congress does. But a cabinet official has to go up into that maelstrom and they have to be cool about it. They have to say, well, I see where you're coming from, Congressman, but let's talk about our policy differences something. But instead of doing that, he lost his temper. He lost his cool.
But, Kevin, might I ask, if you think he should resign, why?
I think it's first he showed when he was losing his cool that he's not necessarily a guy that I want in the middle of a crisis where you have to have a Treasury Secretary who loses cool. But most importantly, the thing that bothers me is that there's all this stuff going on, like the accounting gimmicks to pay for the health bill and stuff that should be halted by a responsible Treasury Secretary when we have a $10 trillion deficit. He's not doing that. Right. He's reneging on his duty, and that's why I think he should resign.
Kevin Hassett, a former Federal Reserve senior economist, now with the American Enterprise Institute, and you can see his columns on the Bloomberg terminal. Kevin, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.